Okay, we'll start then with the opening statement of 3 minutes by Mr. Patterson.
Thank you, Beverly. And I want to thank the League of Women Voters for hosting this as usual, the first in the season. I also want to thank the Athens Public Library for hosting it here. You know, every civic leader is really wanting to make sure that our roadways, our water delivery system, our sewer systems, and everything else you can think of from an infrastructure standpoint is safe and operational. However, a strong leader and a community builder is also making sure that the workers who are working on those are working with equipment that is safe for them to operate with and creating a safe environment in which to work, which is why the Central Labor Council of Southeast Ohio endorsed me to become the next mayor of Athens when they announced that just a couple weeks ago. You know, another thing that is a civic leader, a mayor does, is the mayor strives to have a safe, open, welcoming, inclusive community, which is why I have been very effective in bringing people together from the university, from the city, from the business sector to come together and work together, and that is why I received the Elected Official of the Year award from the National Association of Social Workers. You know, another thing is that a true strong leader and community builder also has the ability to recognize, make changes, and learn from mistakes that take place. And that is why the AFSCME, the American Federation for State, County, and Municipal Employees, just recently endorsed me, gave me their vote of approval to continue on as mayor. You know, having served for over 2/3 of my life in the public sector as a public servant, one of the things that I feel very strongly about is that a public servant serves. Public service is not self-service, where your interests come before the community. I'm asking for your vote come November 5th, or early voting starting on October 8th. I believe that I have proven myself as the leader of the city, as the chief executive, and will continue to go forward with my vision to make the city the best place possible and to receive state and national recognition as such. Thank you.
So, as you may have heard, I'm the anti-slumlord guy, but there's a little more to it than that, because the reason I'm the anti-slumlord guy is that for the past 24 years of my life, I've been organizing ordinarily disempowered people to fight for and win a world that's more just, equitable, and democratic. When I first moved to Athens 20 years ago at the age of 19, I came here to teach public high school students about their little-known First Amendment press rights to distribute their own independently produced, uncensored publications at school. After a group of Nelsonville, York students I worked with put out their newspaper lockdown, their school administrators banned it, threatened to suspend the students, have them arrested, revoke the valedictorian status of the lead organizer so she'd have a harder time getting into college. They falsely accused the students of promoting violence and drug use. They directed book-told police to illegally break up a student meeting at a public park, and they publicly accused me of being an outside agitator who had made children feel unsafe at school. But with my assistance, the Nelsonville students ultimately prevailed. They kept publishing lockdown, their principal resigned, and I've continued to teach students about their press rights ever since. In early 2002, after a rash of sexual and heterosexist violence on OU's campus, I exposed the fact that OU administrators had been violating federal law for 5 years in order to sweep such violence under the rug, at the same time making it harder for students to report such crimes and making students more vulnerable to being assaulted. And this was all happening at a time when more rapes were being reported in OU's dorms than in the residence halls of any other public post-secondary school in Ohio. I also helped organize the 300-person student walkout and subsequent campaign for university reform that first forced OU to comply with the Clery Act and to agree to create the Campus Women's Center. During the Bush era, I organized against the unjust and disastrous wars on Afghanistan and Iraq, getting arrested twice in the process and winning a wrongful arrest lawsuit against the city of Kent. I also organized against Ohio's anti-marriage equality amendment in 2004, which Athens alone voted down among all of Ohio's 88 counties. In 2005, I worked with a coalition of regional building trades unions to improve working conditions on OU building renovation projects. That effort eventually led to the responsible contractor bidding criteria resolution Athens City Council passed in 2008. I also co-founded the progressive magazine The Interactivist, which was published in Athens from 2003 through 2015, From '05 to '08, as editor-in-chief, I transformed it into a democratically managed 40-plus page monthly magazine, produced by an all-volunteer staff of 30 people, and published by a coalition of 5 different organizations, with the magazine serving both as a vehicle for publicizing the work of dozens of regional community activist groups, and for training more than 100 young progressive journalists and media producers. More recently, I've co-founded the Athens Tenant Union, the Athens Mobile Vending Association, and the Southeast Ohio Democratic Socialists of America. In the past year, I've got City Council to improve vending regulations and to increase penalties against slumlords. Now I'm running for mayor on a platform that's pro-tenant, pro-student, pro-environment, feminist, queer positive, anti-racist, and democratic socialist. With your support, I'll be the next mayor of Athens. And with me as mayor, I'm confident we'll win the Athens we deserve.
All right, first question from the media, Mr. Buchanan for Mr. Peters.
All right, hello. My name is Tyler Buchanan. I'm the editor of the Athens Messenger. On the topic of safety, there's been quite a few conversations about safety and crime in town, particularly on the west side. The police chief recently spoke at a West Side Community Association meeting on that subject just about a week or two ago. I just want to know from both of you, what role do you feel that the mayor has, or perhaps doesn't have, in terms of safety and crime rate issues in town and the city? And what ideas might you have as mayor over the next few years to improve safety if you feel the mayor has such a role?
Oh, the mayor does have a role in that, absolutely. You know, some of the things, and I've mentioned this before, Taylor, if you were at that meeting, is that the city of Athens has explored ways in which we can take over the city lights. It's a little known fact, the city lights are owned by AEP. They're old sodium vapor lights. They're not effective in my mind, and they're very expensive, and we pay for that. And what we tried to do, and we'll continue to do this, is to take over that lighting through some mechanism in which we can change them over to LED, which is a brighter downcast light. It'll enhance lighting, is one thing. You know, our police department at that meeting also was sharing, as was I, that the city has several apps out there that are very advantageous for safety. When I'm talking about street safety, I'm talking about sidewalk safety, things of that nature, that you can post those on City Source and they're identified. OU has a great app out there right now called, it's called Bobcat Safe, which Bobcat Safe is something that's tied straight into 911 and will allow someone to have more expedient access to a call if a call is needed. And we've been meeting with the West Side Neighborhood Association. I meet with them often and continue that dialogue to where we can figure out ways in which we can work together as a collective rather than trying to brainstorm things on our own.
Thank you, Mr. Crane.
Yeah, first off, to let folks know why I'm sitting, I do apologize, feeling a little under the weather tonight, so I won't be quite as physically active, but hope to be active in the information I present. I was at that West Side Community Association as well. Police Chief Pyle made the case that crime is disproportionately underreported on the city's west side. I think that's because the west side is a lower income community. Lower income communities particularly tend to have negative history with police encounters. We have over-policing and oftentimes harassment of low-income communities. So I think that's something we need to address. If folks don't trust the police to even report the crimes that are occurring there. Another issue with West Side safety is obviously the deplorable state of the sidewalks that the city administration has not forced landlords to maintain. So I think that's a safety issue that needs to be addressed as well, particularly on the west side and in other predominantly renter areas of town.
All right, now, Mr. Morris, ask Mr. Crane first.
Yeah, Connor Morris with Connor Morris with the Athens News. Thanks for your time today. Looking for my question. Okay. The number of sexual assaults reported to the Athens police and to the OU police each year has increased in recent times. Survivor advocates and police say they believe this is the result of increased reporting rather than increased occurrences. However, the number of people charged with these crimes does not appear to have increased during the same time. What can be done at the APD and at the city level to encourage people to continue to report these crimes, of course, but also to increase accountability for offenders?
So nationally, since Donald Trump was elected president, we've seen an increase in the number of reported rapes across the U.S. So I don't think that it's surprising that we're seeing them here as well. I think that we need to do more to listen to survivor advocates to make sure that people who are receiving these reports are trauma informed and know how to adequately respond to them, so that it becomes known in the community that if something awful like this is done to you by someone else, that you do have a sympathetic, informed person to report to. And then certainly we need to look at how the police department and the city law office have been handling these reports and see if we can increase accountability.
Thank you. It is troubling. It's very troubling. What is even more troubling for me, and this is where I think we need to work with our partners at Ohio University as well as our partners through the National Association of Social Workers, to encourage people who are going and having a rape kit test done or getting as far as the emergency room at the hospital, and then at the last moment changing their mind and not going through with what is vital for being able to deploy appropriate investigations into alleged rapes or sexual assaults in the city. The thing that really does trouble me, and I think the path forward, like I said, is to really work hard with our partners at Ohio University to come up with something that will certainly destigmatize that person going and getting the treatment that they need to get and getting the testing done, so our investigators can follow through with them. If the rape kit tests aren't done, there's not a whole lot that the police can do to follow up, or if it's not reported. And again, that's where I think that our colleagues within the field of social work and clinicians can certainly help.
Mr. Prince had his turn, so Mr. Zimmerman, this time Mr. Patterson will answer first.
All right, thank you very much. My name is Zach Zimmerman. So over the past year or so, several businesses and restaurants have closed down on Court Street. Taking that into consideration, along with the fact that the overall student enrollment at Ohio U has been consistently declining, what will you do to make sure that there is not any sort of economic downturn here in Athens?
One of the first things we need to do, quite simply, is diversify our local economy. We need to think about things very differently. There were, at last count, I think there was 2 or 3 pizza places that closed on Court Street. But then you also have to think Court Street was kind of saturated with places selling pizza, so that's a business decision on the one hand. We're going to be seeing a bookstore that's shuttering in the near future on Court Street as well. A lot of that is what we're seeing in the e-economy, where people are downloading books online, or they're getting their books for the university online. That is a field that's all changing, but we do need to diversify our local economic economy. We've got several businesses that I'm working with through the Athens County Economic Development, as well as working through what's called ARC, which is ways in which we can get funding or potentially get funding for businesses to grow as long as they're showing employment growth in the city. I also am a firm believer in what will be an 88-mile bike trail system up in the Wayne National Forest is something that we're going to see a lot of tourism coming in if and when it happens. It's going to happen. It's just making sure that we're nimble enough to diversify our economy to deal with what we're going to see with an influx of tourists, to something that I think is going to be a game changer for not only Athens but for the county.
So I think we have plenty of tourism assets here, and money is better spent better promoting them than to never-endingly keep building new things. Also, I think that what we're primarily seeing uptown is food service businesses closing. This is something I've dealt with as the president of the Athens Mobile Vending Association. The fact is, commercial landlords are pricing would-be local operators out of the market for brick-and-mortar restaurant space. So if that's happening right now, and the commercial landlords are just banking on naive newcomers Like, I mean, even lots of pizza couldn't make it on Court Street, and they're a ubiquitous corporate chain. They're just depending on naive people thinking maybe they'll try it out, trapping those people into a 3-year lease, and then they fail. But then somebody else comes in, we'll have that turnover, we'll frequently have vacant storefronts. Through the Athens Mobile Vending Association, I argued that the city should be making it easier for local food service businesses to enter the market through mobile vending, and unfortunately Mayor Patterson and I were adversaries on that.
Thank you. Mr. Shilcock. First for Mr. Green.
Hi, thank you for taking my question before I ask it, but recently this past week we saw the global climate strike come here to Athens. I kind of want to get a feel for what you guys think should be done in the city to sort of reduce carbon emissions and make the city a bit more green energy.
Mr. Crane, would you speak up a little louder? We're having trouble hearing you well.
Absolutely. Is this any better? Okay. So I'm a socialist because capitalism is ecologically unsustainable. In the meantime, I think there are very clear steps we can take to reduce the city's carbon footprint, namely strengthening our housing code to include reasonable insulation and weatherization standards that would save tenants from devastating utility bills and greatly shrink our city's carbon footprint at the same time. That is a staple of Operation Slumlord Smackdown, the centerpiece of my platform.
And now we go to the audience.
I want to answer this one. I have to say right up front, I'm so proud of you. What I'm saying that is, it is you who voted on the ballot initiative to have a carbon fee. We were the first city in the nation to deploy a carbon fee to where that carbon fee will go towards solar panels, solar energy that we can put on municipality buildings, not only in the city of Athens, but what you agreed to was throughout the county. It can be public libraries, it can be the courthouse, it can be this building, it could be, well, you already have it, so you don't need it here. It could also be at the community center, it could be a number of different places. That is how you reduce your carbon footprint as a municipality. I'm also very proud that our water treatment plant, one of our 2 major energy consumers in the city, wastewater treatment plant, water treatment plant. Water treatment plant has a solar array down there to where it is offsetting your taxpayer dollars with getting green energy behind the meter into that water treatment plant. With the carbon fee, which will start collecting in 2020, we have big plans for what would be powering the community center, the wastewater treatment plant, and other municipal buildings around the city, and we're leading that charge. Know that we are doing great things as a community to offset our carbon footprint, and my role with the climate mayors, we're going to see that through.
Now we turn to the audience questions, and Mr. Patterson, you go first this time. What do you believe the primary responsibilities of a mayor are or should be?
You know, the primary responsibility of the mayor is, one, to make sure that you have high quality water being delivered to your home, that your wastewater is removed safely and treated effectively, that your roadways are safe. But I'll also say this, a very good friend of mine whom I reached out to immediately after tornadoes ripped through Dayton, Ohio, Mayor Nan Whaley. You know, I think the role of the mayor is to work with all municipalities to raise each other up. If we can deploy assets, or could have when they had that tornado experience, or worse yet, a mayor's primary role is to protect its citizens. So when I look at things, large-scale events that take place in Athens, you know where my default goes? My default goes to Dayton, once again, and El Paso, and Pittsburgh, and cities that have been affected by gun violence, and it's the mayor's role to make sure people are safe. That's a tall order. When I look at Nan Whaley, and I've had many conversations with her, she's doing great work, she's a strong leader, but that's a tough yoke to hold when you are sitting there looking at gun violence and how it has affected your own community and taken lives. That has changed your community.
I think the primary responsibility of a mayor is to create a more just, equitable, and democratic community. I think that has to do with enforcing laws that are on the books dealing with public safety, such as enforcing our city housing code, which has probably never happened. And that has a great deal of consequence for the 80% of our community who reside in rental housing. So that is how I would make a decisive break from my opponent's administration if elected mayor.
Thank you. The next question, we begin with Mr. Crane. What will you do to improve revenue as we are losing income tax dollars because of changes the state has made to the tax laws so that we can continue to provide services?
You know, right now, the city takes a very regressive approach to generating revenue. We have the most hyper-vigilant parking enforcement the world has ever seen, and we have some of the most lax housing code enforcement the world has ever seen. If I'm speeding on the highway and I get pulled over by a police officer, I don't get a month and a half to slow down before I might face a ticket. But if a landlord has a housing code violation, they do get 45 days to correct it before there's any question of them facing a fine. If I'm on Court Street and there's an expired meter, I don't get a month and a half to find a quarter. But again, that's how we treat landlords. We also have a housing code that says that each day of each uncorrected violation is a complete and separate offense for which a landlord is to be charged with a minor misdemeanor criminal offense and be fined $100. However, our city law director treats multiple violations as single violations no matter how many there are or how long they last. At City Council, I spoke of a case where I got the city to press charges, or let's say charge, against a landlord who took 4 months to correct 24 housing code violations. So according to the code, he was facing thousands of offenses and up to $250,000 in fines. Our law director treated that as one offense, again, reduced thousands of offenses to a single offense for which my landlord was fined $75. The city bends over backwards to let landlords off the hook, and we lose a great deal of revenue as a result.
Beverly, could you repeat the
Yeah.
question?
Yeah, okay. Sometimes I need to say yes. What will you do to improve revenue as we are losing income tax dollars because of changes in the state law, tax laws, the state tax laws, so that we can continue to provide services?
Thank you. I mean, this is a big issue. As we're seeing student body enrollments going down, and I'll tell you right now, high school classes aren't getting any larger right now. As a matter of fact, they're getting smaller. We're going to still see fewer and fewer students. This is national, by the way. But so if we're seeing fewer students, we're going to see, fewer faculty, group 2 faculty, group 3s and 4s that are not continued on. And that's where we're going to see some real serious impacts to our local revenue that comes in, because the local revenue for the city of Athens, as long as it's not an enterprise fund, is coming from income tax. We've got to diversify our local economy. Ways in which we can do that is we can free up some obstacles that do get in the way, say up in the uptown area. Uptown is a historic district. It's possible that we can have things like what are called capacity fees, as long as someone is able to show that they are able to produce jobs and a steady growth in jobs up on Court Street, that we can offset that capacity fee and remove it and get it out of their way. Otherwise, they likely won't develop some properties in the uptown area. We're going to have more and more businesses rolling into Athens. Like them or not, Menards is coming into Athens. That's going to be 130 jobs. Of varying levels, and I understand that, but that's revenue coming in. But we also have to look at the tech sector and be savvy. We've got so much brain drain from OU, yet we don't have enough landing pads in them for affordable office space. We've got to change that as well.
Thank you. All right, Mr. Patterson, first this time. Sorry. Normally I don't need it. What do you understand as being the needs and issues of community members in the Far East Side, the Near East Side, the South Side, the West Side, if you can discriminate?
I will do my best. And I think I can do that because for those of you who are familiar with campaigning, you all have this little thing, actually it's kind of big, called the walking list. And you're going to all the people who voted or of your own party or whatever. You know what, guys? I don't have a walking list. I threw it away because you know why? I'm the mayor of everybody. So as I'm knocking on lots and lots of doors, I'm hopefully going to knock on every door between now and November 5th, The things I'm hearing, you know, on the south side, one of the things I'm hearing is issues of water line breaks or sewer line breaks. And in some cases, I'm hearing people that would like sidewalks. In other cases, I'm hearing they don't want sidewalks. On the north side, again, we've got terrain on the north side that is very steep and very prone to slippage. I'm hearing a lot of concerns over that, as well as street maintenance. When you have hilly terrain, street maintenance becomes extremely challenging, but I have to say, our guys are doing an outstanding job at that. West side, safety. But I want to say this too. I'm hearing safety on the south side. I'm hearing safety in different forms. I'm hearing people say, you know, my car got broken into. Was your door locked? No, it wasn't. Shame on me for not locking my door, but I did have to change my cup holder removed. You know, that you're hearing all kinds of things, and every time I'm going door to door, I'm scribbling it down. Why is there water leaking out of my street over here? And I send that information on to Engineering and Public Works, and they fix it. So you're hearing everything.
And Mr. Crane, and you can add the north side, that was left out.
Thank you. So why is it we see local traffic only signs and speed bumps and the city giving a huge amount of attention to the Near East Side, which may be deserved attention, but we see the deplorable state of sidewalks on the west side. We see a general lack of code enforcement for the 80% of Athenians who rent their homes. Right now, the city government devotes a disproportionate amount of attention to more affluent residents. There is no question about that, and there is no question that I would reverse that approach and focus more on the people who are struggling and need the city's help the most.
Okay. And this time, Mr. Crane, you start. Considering the debacle of the east side paving schedule and the West Elementary, we should say East-West Elementary drop-off pickup situation, what case can be made for better planning in these situations?
You know, I don't want to take an easy pot shot at my opponent. I feel that those were obviously disasters. I would like to think that my record shows greater skill at planning, that I would avoid things like that. But I haven't been able to observe the inner workings of those situations. And so in all fairness to Mayor Patterson, I won't claim to have the same insight into that he has had.
Could you repeat that question? Because I thought I heard you say something about west side, or east side as well.
East-West is the new name of the school.
Of course.
But I'll read it. Considering the debacle of the east side paving schedule and the East-West Elementary drop-off pickup situation, so I guess that's two debacles, what case can be made for better planning in these situations?
Absolutely, that's a great question. And this is one of those cases where you learn. A strong leader, a savvy leader will sit there and recognize areas of improvement and adapt those in the future when you're doing different projects. Hopefully we don't have another East-West or whatever we're calling West Elementary. You know, with that, we could have messaged it more effectively, I think, to some of the people who live down there, that there's orange barriers are going to go up. The orange barriers, quite honestly, were there because of concerns with the school district, as well as concerns with my staff of children darting across Mid-Central Avenue from one side because they were dropped off. But I recognized some things early on. That variable message signboard that you saw sitting down there directing parents to drop off further on West State Street, the reason that was put up was because I saw that right away and said, wait a minute, we've got to put a sign down here giving them the information to go down further onto near where the Safe Routes to School steps are to drop off and also to pick up. The peak schedule, I mean, that's an easy explanation. Our paint machine was broken. And until that could be fixed, we couldn't get out there and effectively paint the striping on the Central Avenue, but that's there. It seems to be running smoothly. I was just going door to door down through that area the other day, and it seems like it's going well, but I would love to hear feedback from anyone who thinks otherwise for the way things are working down there with a larger student body at East-West.
Okay, now Mr. Patterson is first, and I'm going to combine two. Why would the city spend money on parking garage renovations when potholes persist in the city? How would you respond, and in particular, ensure that our roadways are in better condition?
Quite simply, we have enterprise funds. There are funding streams in the city of Athens to where I can't take revenue that's coming into the parking garage and go, you know what, I'm going to deviate this and fill potholes, or I'm going to deviate this and build a new playground at the community center, or that I'm going to use it for repairing water lines or sewer lines. You can't do that. If I did that, I'd go to jail. All right, that is money that is proprietary to the parking garage itself, whereas money from the street fund is only, and we're going to be getting an increase in the gas tax of $178,000 in 2020. That money too cannot be used for anything other than street maintenance and street repairs. Your water bill, your sewer bill, those monies are enterprise funds that I can't use for anything other than improvements to your water delivery system with your water rates, or to the sewer system for your sewer collection and improvements to the wastewater treatment plant. So know that. I know that we're often trying to re-educate everyone that there are funding streams that we can't use anywhere else.
Yeah, I agree there are funding stream restrictions. And, you know, I think I share a lot of citizens' frustration seeing when East State Street was like driving on the moon for so many months. And I feel that there has to be a better approach. If it's going to take that long to fix something, we shouldn't make it worse before we're prepared to fix it. But yeah, we have to do better than we have been doing as a city in this.
Ready? Okay, Mr. Crane, the next question. Do you support the construction of a new joint OU Athens police station on the east side? How will it be paid for? Why is it necessary?
This goes to me first. No.
We have a fire headquarters, which a lot of you are familiar with, on Columbus Road, which has maybe 5 years of life left in that building. We have renovated it time and time again. We have heavier equipment, because that's what happens when new improvements come out for your ladder truck or your pumper trucks. You know, things don't seem to get lighter, they seem to get heavier, and we have a bridge that basically crosses over to the fire headquarters. That fire station, like any building out there, you know, has a limited life expectancy. And so one of the things we are exploring is the possibility of having a new fire headquarters somewhere, possibly a joint station to where we can have the police department, OU's police department possibly in there. There's some potential places that could happen. One in particular happens to be in an opportunity zone. An opportunity zone is an area in the city, and we have 4 of them in the county. There's 2 in the city. An opportunity zone is an area where someone who wants to invest their capital gains into a project that they can pay for in the city over time, or any entity over time, can pay that debt back over time, however long that's going to take. But you know, I do know that we do need to make some improvements with our fire department, our police department, and I know OU is struggling too with their fix right now is up to the ridges, but that's not a long-term plan.
Okay, next question, Mr. Patterson goes first. How should we fund public transit in Athens? And if a countywide transportation sales tax makes it to the ballot, will you support it?
You know, we're the county seat. Athens is the county seat. Athens is where the majority of the jobs are here in Athens. When I look at the newly expanded Route 7, which I worked really hard on, by the way, for 3.5 years, almost 4 years, working with Michael Lockman, and more recently with Jesse Schmetzer and several other people, Kelly Haddis, to have a bus line that goes from Albany to Athens to Nelsonville, you know, on an hourly cycle. The reason for that? Jobs. Jobs. Getting access to county services, healthcare delivery, and changing the quality of life for people who may or may not have adequate transportation to get back and forth. Would I support it? Beverly, absolutely I would support it. I would support it for this simple reason. This is the first step. What I would like to see is something way beyond what the old aorta system looked like, to where we've got regular transportation that goes to Gloucester, it goes to Trimble, it goes to Coolville. You know, if we can sit there and create a transit system that is effectively working for all of our citizens in this county, and a lot of them are coming into, like I said, Athens for services, for jobs, for healthcare. We are the healthcare area. We are the healthcare provider for this county. And if you don't have access to get your follow-on care, your health is going to deteriorate. And something like this for $1 a rise. And Jesse Schmetzer just told me that ridership on that Restaurant 7 is up to 1,000 already.
I applaud the work Mayor Patterson has done to expand public transportation in our region. I would certainly want to continue that if elected mayor. I would do everything I could to make sure that that expansion was not funded through a sales tax, because sales taxes are regressive taxes that place a disproportionate burden on lower income people. I'm in favor of progressive taxation. So yes, I would want to expand public transit, but not through a sales tax increase.
Mr. Crane first. With dwindling financial resources, what is your plan to continue to maintain and improve the city's infrastructure?
Again, we have got so much potential revenue that we could generate through enforcing the housing code, strengthen the housing code, fining landlords according to the housing code. So I think that we have a wonderful opportunity to offset those streams of dwindling revenue and improve the majority of Athenians' daily living conditions at the same time.
You know, I have to give so much credit to our Engineering and Public Works Department. I'm proud of the fact that we have 4 professional engineers that work for the city, 3 of whom work, well, 2 of whom work at the, 3 of them who work down in Engineering and Public Works. And it's not just that I'm proud of them for having their professional engineering degree and understanding how things work from a civil engineering standpoint, but I'll also say this. They have been able to bring in so much revenue in terms of state and federal grants that has really helped us be more fiscally conservative with the money that is coming through your water bill, your sewer bill, to help modify, enhance, improve our delivery systems throughout the city of Athens, quite simply.
The next question follows up on that in a way. Athens is, and it's Mr. Patterson first, Athens is experiencing growth. East State Street has grown from a smaller 2-lane road to a growing strip of stores not locally owned. Now we see traffic congestion and expansion of road infrastructure. Please discuss the model of development that you see for the future.
You know, when you look at East State Street is nearing, it's being built out. That there's not a whole lot of growth. The city plan, if you look at the comprehensive plan, is not to continue to grow east, because why would you? You're not going to grow into a floodplain, you know, because everybody and their mother's going to have to sit there and build up a foot above the 100-year flood plus some. So you're not going to go in that direction. What I see as potential growth for the city of Athens is growing to the southwest, or growing out the 50 corridor. There is developable space. You don't have to contend with grounds that are going to flood. And, you know, I agree that East State Street, you know, there's a few outlots that are there that are developable. What I would like to see is possibly having a mix of housing out there. I know on the uphill side of East State Street, there's some work being done to create some apartment complexes, 6plexes or whatever along there. I think there's developable land on the uphill side, but you know, in terms of growth any further on East State Street, there's not a whole lot of land left to grow into.
I'm afraid my opponent suffers from an edifice complex. All of these beautification projects, attempts to build new structures. If you look at the affordable housing plan that's been put forward by the mayor and his allies on city council, the plan is to subsidize with public funds the private development of newly constructed $250,000 homes that cost more than the already unaffordable homes on the market. So I am more interested in, rather than building a $12 million new bike trail when we've got a wonderful bike trail in our community, I am interested in improving the lives of our residents. I am interested in beautification projects that happen in people's living rooms and their bedrooms and their showers. I'm interested in enforcing our housing code. That's the kind of infrastructure and beautification that I'm most focused on.
All right, Mr. Crane first. A city council member from a city in Vermont recently proposed disarming their police department. Do you favor disarming the Athens Police Department? Mr. Crane first.
In general, I think we need to move away from our model of policing. In general, we do need to move towards disarming police departments and defunding police departments. Ironically, some might consider me an anti-law enforcement candidate for issuing that perspective, but I'm certainly interested in enforcing housing law, and we don't need any guns to do that. At least I don't think so. So I do think that we're at a time in America where the model of policing that we've had for centuries is just not appropriate, and we need to be rethinking that whole paradigm.
It's fairly utopian. I am in favor of them continuing to use, to be issued firearms, because there are cases in which they are needed, absolutely. I will revert back to Dayton, Ohio. Had Dayton, Ohio had the police department not been able to arrive within 30 some odd seconds, I hate to think about what would have happened in Dayton, Ohio had the law enforcement there not had firearms.
Okay, we'll ready for the next one first. And this is somewhat similar as Mr. Patterson first. The West Side has been experiencing a spike in crime. West Elementary is slated to be demolished in several years, and rental homes continue to decline. How do you intend to help renew the West Side and ensure your resources are utilized? Equal resources are utilized.
One of my fears, and not a fear, I mean, I see it. I see rental units that remain unrented in a lot of places, not just on the West Side, but in a lot of places in the city of Athens. And I think that's by and large part because we're seeing a drop in student enrollment at Ohio University. I mentioned this before, we've not seen the bottom of that drop, nor have we seen the upper classes migrate into the position to where they move off campus. One of the things that I feel strongly about are creating things like tax incremental financing for neighborhood redevelopment, to where we could possibly have assistance for someone who wants to buy a home that was a former rental unit and help them in terms of financing to remodel that house back into a single family home again. I see a lot of opportunity with houses that we're going to see more and more sitting there vacant because the student body isn't there to move into them, or they want to move into amenities that fit their lifestyle. They want to move into something like Coates Run, or move into Rivergate Towers, or wherever. There's, their needs or their wants are different.
So in contrast to what city officials have touted as an affordable housing plan, which would in fact increase both house sale and rental prices and lead to pushing more working class people out of Athens, I have a plan to actually increase affordable housing. right now, what drives up house sale prices on the west side in particular, where you have homes that could be affordable single-family owner-occupied homes, but they're priced for landlords. If you have something that can generate income, it's obviously more valuable than a place you simply live in. And also on top of that, by not enforcing the housing code, we ensure that landlords don't have to invest any money into these places. That's why they progressively decline. Whereas if an owner-occupier was going to buy it, all of a sudden they'd have to shell out 50 grand to fix the place up to bring it up to code. So by aspects of Operation Slumlord Smackdown include forcing landlords to pay the costs of bringing these properties up to code by instituting rent control. That's going to ensure that these houses are better value for the money, and it's going to bring both rental and house sale prices down over time. Also, in a situation like the one I mentioned, where a landlord's facing $250,000 in fines for a house that's worth $60,000, the city has the opportunity to assume ownership of some of these places, bring them up to code, sell them on a nonprofit basis to provide affordable housing.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Crane. All right. Next question, starting with Mr. Crane. Would you favor a plastic bag ban?
Yes.
Mr. Patterson?
I'm a reusable bag guy, so yes.
We're getting down toward the bottom. If anybody has more questions you can think of, write them fast. But let's try two more. Okay, good. Who's first? Mr. Patterson? What are some of the creative solutions you propose to stimulate the economy? How will you motivate recent graduates to seek work and build a family in Athens?
I mean, this isn't anything new. The Armory is one of those places that I fell in love with when I moved here to Athens in 1998, and continues to be that. What we're doing now is exploring ways in which we can turn the community or the Armory into a share space or a co-work space, because one of the things that we're seeing is a lot of the rents, a lot of the retail spaces up on Court Street are not obtainable for a graduate student or an undergraduate student who's working on some really cool apps or working on something, writing a novel, whatever, and they can't afford to get an office space somewhere else, but with a city-owned building and finding partners to turn that into a co-working space would really make for a great way to where we can start stimulating some interesting tech growth here in the city of Athens. I think tech is the other way that we need to go, that we need to work more with our partners at Ohio University to create spaces to where we become known as a tech city as opposed to a manufacturing city, and we certainly don't have heavy industry, don't want to see that personally. But I think that we with the West Union Corridor, with the new HCOM, I think there's real opportunity out there to start stimulating some real interesting entrepreneurial endeavors down in that area of the city. And with Stu Mack is going to be blowing it up, I guarantee it, really soon.
We are just a hop, skip, and a jump away from the thriving tourism economy of the Hocking Hills region. And with the assets we have here, from natural beauty, outdoor recreation opportunities, a thriving arts and music scene, a nationally renowned food and beverage scene, all of the publicly accessible free cultural programming that Ohio University brings to our community, we have so many opportunities to draw that already thriving tourism economy just a little bit further south. And I think we should be doing that. I think we can be doing that in so many better ways. We have all of these parents of Ohio University students who come to town for pre-college and move in and move out. The city should be taking steps to promote all of these unique assets of Athens to these folks while we're here. Athens should be a primary weekend destination of folks in Columbus, just as the Hocking Hills region is. And we can bring a lot more money into our community that way. And then, of course, we need to take steps to make sure that that additional money coming in is more equitably distributed than it is now.
might follow up on that very nicely. What is your position on short-term rentals in all areas of the city? I assume we're talking about B&Bs. So Mr. Crane first.
Yeah, if they're adequately regulated, which the city has no track record of doing thus far, I think that would be a great thing because it could assist in the development of local tourism. So I am definitely open to the idea, but we need to properly regulate these places just as we need to properly regulate long-term rentals.
There's currently legislation that is sitting right before the Planning Commission as we speak, to where we are taking this up, a piece of legislation crafted by a city council member, which I think does have in it some very strong points of regulation as we move forward. You know, and to share with all of you, you know, again, being a fiscal conservative with your taxpayer dollars, when I'm traveling to conferences, when I'm traveling all over the place under city business, I often stay, rather than the conference hotel, I'm going to stay in an Airbnb. And most of those Airbnbs are owner occupied. They are great places to be and understand the community through the owner who's sleeping 2 doors down from where Connie and I are there. If Connie's with me, or you know, even on vacations, we tend to use Airbnbs. So I'm not opposed to Airbnb platforms, and that's the name brand, VRBO. It's short-term rentals. But I think we need to really get it right as we go forward.
All right, Mr. Patterson first. Is there a way to fund curbside composting that is affordable and would encourage composting? Once the pilot program ended, the city has been charging $20 a month for composting. Such a high charge does not incentivize people to compost.
No, it absolutely doesn't. I agree with you, and I agree with whoever wrote that question. You know, kind of a teaser alert. My city staff has worked very hard, along with a professor at Ohio University and other individuals who live in the sustainability world, to come up with a more effective pay structure for our trash recycling as well as composting. And if my memory serves me correctly, that price will go way down. Again, it'll be an opt-in program, not an opt-out program, but I have a lot of confidence that we will have curbside composting come back again. When I travel all over the place, I was out in Portland, Oregon. Portland, Oregon has had curbside composting for years. So much so that their curbside composting bins look like our big blue bins, and people are using them. But they're also putting yard waste in. They're putting twigs, they're putting branches, they're putting a lot of larger items in there. The Athens Hocking Recycling Center can't handle the larger material or feedstock. But you know, what would be a great thing to explore in the near future, and SOPEC, Southeast Ohio Public Energy Council, has been doing this, is to have a methane digester to where feedstock can go into that thing and produce energy as well as methane for vehicles.
Great.
Those sound like great ideas to me, but as folks will probably remember, just a couple months ago, Mayor Patterson threatened to derail successful recycling and composting programs and put at risk over 30 local good union jobs in the process when his administration tried to take our recycling and refuse hauling contract away from Athens Hocking Recycling Center and award it to an out-of-town for-profit non-union provider without a realistic cost assessment or any proven track record. So I think this sounds great. We need to look at ways to expand composting, but I am very concerned with my opponent's potential to do that, ability to do that.
Okay, Mr. Crane, I think we have time for 2 more questions. Mr. Crane, there seems to be a major difference between Athens city officials and its citizens, especially on the question of marijuana legalization. Voters overwhelmingly supported TACO, I don't remember what that stands for, whereas city officials remained silent. Where do you come down on the question of drug laws?
Yeah, so I support care over criminalization. When it comes to the Athens cannabis ordinance, I think that's a great example of the extreme disconnect between the majority of our citizens and our city officials. We live in a city where 80% of people live in rental housing, but 100% of city office holders are homeowners and several are landlords. We live in a city where 80% of the population is under the age of 45, but 92% of office holders are over the age of 45. We live in a city, in a region that has some of the highest wage inequality and poverty in the entire state, but all of our city office holders are current or retired white-collar professionals, business owners, landlords, many of whom have six-figure annual household incomes. We need a city government that is more representative of our city. That is why I encourage everyone to vote for the three working class tenant candidates running for office, myself, Ellie Hamrick, and Chris Monday.
Yeah.
Could you repeat the question?
Yes. There seems to be a major difference between Athens city officials and its city citizens on the question of marijuana legalization. Voters overwhelmingly supported taco, and maybe you can spell that out, whereas city officials remained silent. Where do you come down on the question of drug laws?
Well, I was born in a state that was one of the first states in the union to decriminalize less than an ounce of marijuana, so that's a starting point for me. You know, as a city leader, the voters have voted, and you know, to decriminalize marijuana in the city of Athens. Like again, it's what the people have voted for. As I've gone door to door, I see people certainly adhering to their right. If I had $1 for every door I opened and I got a contact high, or maybe it was just allergies. You know, people are exercising their rights. Simple.
Next question to Mr. Patterson. Many 2020 Democratic candidates for president have refused to take campaign contributions. Do you accept campaign contributions, and from whom?
I do, because campaigns are expensive. And I accept campaign contributions for anybody who, one, just supports me. Number two, individuals who see the same vision that I do as I'm moving this city forward in a progressive fashion when it comes to quality of life, enhancements, the city infrastructure. You know, I've had a number of people from all different sectors. I just received a check for a modest, small amount from someone who is currently a renter on the West Side saying, Mayor, I like what you're doing. Here's my $18 to support you as you move forward. But I have received campaign donations from, again, a lot of different sectors throughout the city, which helps keep my campaign moving forward.
Well, just to clarify, I don't think 2020 Democratic candidates have refused contributions. Certainly, Senator Sanders is quite proud of the money he's been able to raise from small donors. What 2020 Democratic candidates have done is refuse to take money from some economic elites, such as those in the fossil fuel industry, health insurance industry, pharmaceutical industries. And here in Athens, our economic elites are landlords, developers, real estate moguls, and other business owners. In 2015, 96% of the donations to my opponent came from either a landlord, real estate developer, or business owner, other business owner, that is. 40% of his entire donations came from John Wharton. John Wharton, who was voted worst landlord in Athens. Every single year, the Athens News polled readers on that subject. And just this coming Friday, Alan McMillan, another major landlord and Trump supporter, will be organizing a fundraising gala personally in his home for Mayor Patterson. You know, these are pretty much the Koch brothers of Athens. They are not my backers. I will not be receiving any money from them. Should I receive any donations from these folks, I will try to get it to tenants whose security deposits have been wrongfully withheld.
I think this is the last question before we have our closing statements. And it's Mr. Crane first. The mayor of Athens is the public face of the city and all of its decisions. What would your approach be to working with and or responding to people who publicly criticize your decisions?
Oh my goodness. I mean, I've been a journalist and a public figure since I was a teenager. I've worked in so many directly democratic community organizations. I am I think, very open to constructive criticism. I think I've got quite thick skin. I think I'm used to hearing criticism that's not quite constructive either. So that's nothing new to me. I think that if we're going to build a more democratic community, we need to have more critical discussion. We can't accuse anybody who's making a critique of being immature and calling someone names. You know, this is important stuff. I think we've been having a much more critical discussion than usual in this mayoral race. It helps when there are actually two people running and voters have a choice, something that's pretty rare for our community. Yes, I would like to continue the increased critical discussions we have already been having this past year in our community.
Just real quick, a couple fact checks that anyone might want to do is that the so-called gala is actually just a meet and greet. So it's a little difference between a gala and a meet and greet. And the other thing I'd like to clarify is, you know, your numbers, I don't know where you received your numbers from, but they're certainly flawed in terms of 40%, especially in light of the fact that one of our beloved pizza makers donated that same amount, but you might want to do some homework on that.
I can
you know,
pull up the form from the Athens County Board of Elections right now.
The one thing that I do is like this. I will sit there and speak with people face to face about issues that are going on. I'm very receptive to those who are criticizing what's going on in the city. I'm open ears all the time, and I'm always trying to find a path forward, you know, because so often it is so easy to destroy things and to break them down with a hammer rather than to build things up. And for me, I'm a community builder. I'm someone who enjoys building relationships. If someone is struggling with something or someone doesn't like something that's going on, I will typically sit down and meet with them either in my office or some neutral place, and often it's a neutral place, to sit there, and I want to understand what the real problem is. And I also want to understand how can we move forward together, because I can't operate in a box, and as a decision maker, I need your input too, because certainly something is troubling you.
Okay, I don't have any more questions, so I think we'll go to the closing statements. And remember, each of you has 2 minutes for a closing statement. That should take us right up to closing time. So I think it's, let's see, we start with Mr. Patterson. I think it should be Mr. Crane first this time.
So since Mayor Patterson brought up fact checking, I'm going to do some fact checking and put aside what I plan to make as my closing statement. I have in front of me a statement of contributions received from friends and supporters of Steve Patterson. This was provided by the Athens County Board of Elections. Keep in mind that Mayor Patterson did not face a challenger in 2015, so there was not any reason for anyone to donate a penny to his campaign. He was guaranteed victory because voters had no other choice. Nonetheless, $625 total dollars were reported. As Mayor Patterson said, John Gutekunst, owner of Avalanche Pizza, donated $250, which was indeed equal to the $250 donated by John Warden. They were tied for being the largest single donor. $100 came from real estate developer Bruce Wentworth, and $25 came from retired marketing professor Rose Dekas. Do the math, $250 is 40% of $625. Do the math, take out that $25 donation from Ms. Dekas, and you come up with 96% of campaign donations coming from either a landlord, real estate developer, or other business owner. That is correct, at least according to the Board of Elections' response to a public records request. Let's talk about some other fact checking. When I announced my campaign, Mayor Patterson responded by lying about the number of code inspectors, claiming at first that we had 6 inspectors when we had 4. Then when I called him out on it, he upped the number to 7. Even claimed that the 2018 annual report from the Office of Code Enforcement said that there were 7 inspectors when it explicitly states that there were 4. He continued spreading this misinformation for 6 months until on August 28th, the Athens News finally forced him to come clean. And unfortunately, I've got to bring up the fact that Mayor Patterson has a record of this. As an OU professor, he was censured by a professional ethics committee for including 2 false publication credits on his CV when he applied for tenure.
And it's time, Mr. Crane. All right, Mr. Patterson, remember 2 minutes.
there is a difference between pre and post campaign filing in terms of your financials. So you might want to look at that a little more carefully as opposed to cherry picking whether it's pre or post. But regardless, as a civic leader, as your mayor, I think I have a proven track record of again, working for all the citizens of Athens. A pothole, a water line, a sewer line doesn't see a letter behind the name of who's fixing it. It's just getting the job done. I work for everybody. I work for all the citizens of Athens on a lot of different issues. Again, I think that my track record of public service, as I mentioned in my opening statement, of spending almost 40 years of my life, as an Air Force, Air National Guard, Air Force veteran, as a faculty member at Ohio University and other universities in this nation, as a legislator for the city of Athens, and most recently as the chief executive for the city of Athens. I have taken the role of public servant very seriously, and never in my service as a public servant did I put self-service over public service. Thank you.